A larger question about whether a student should be allowed to wear a hijab in the classroom. The spotlight is once again on the hijab debate, and this time it's Allahabad High Court's order that has prompted the debate. The Allahabad High Court has dismissed the plea of a minor Muslim student who wanted to wear a headscarf in addition to the prescribed uniform at her private CBSE school in Prayagraj. Now remember, in 2022, this issue played out in Karnataka. Back then, a demand that was made to wear a hijab in a government-run establishment. This time, however, the petition is regarding a permission to wear hijab in a private school. However, the Allahabad High Court is now the latest to reject this demand of wearing a hijab in an educational establishment. Let's begin by looking closely at what exactly the Allahabad High Court has stated in its order. One, it has said that the uniform must be bona fide. The uniform has to be non-discriminatory. Uniform instills discipline, instills equality, and is for religion-neutral atmosphere in the school. Past use of headscarf does not create a right, and a student can't force relaxation of a policy. But this debate essentially centers around one core issue. Is the hijab an essential practice in Islam? The fundamental question has divided opinion in the past and has also been the focus of several court orders over the hijab. Here's what the petitioner had asked, and the Allahabad High Court responded on this matter. One, the petitioner has said that the headscarf is an essential practice. The High Court says that this claim is only a bare assertion. They've also, of course, gone on to say that there is no authoritative text filed in this regard. This is what High Court says in response to the hijab being an essential practice. Also, of course, going on to add that this particular material, or there is no material in specific to establish any religious obligation. And of course, the larger question about whether there is any kind of essentiality in terms of proof of non-compliance, or whether even Article 24 claim, whether it needs any kind of factual assertion. It's wearing it since class 6 or previous wearing of it is not enough. Essentiality has not been established in this case, is what the High Court has very specifically stated in response to this essentiality argument. It's precisely the religious practice finding that has now triggered a pushback from Muslim clerics. They argue that the hijab is an essential practice of Islam and are now considering a review of the High Court order.
The Quran and the Hadith has very clearly mentioned that hijab is very much an integral and essential part of Islam. In Quran, Allah has very clearly mentioned in Surah Nur and Surah Ahzab. So I think that there is some confusion as far as this particular thing is concerned.
And for more on this, let's quickly introduce our panelists. Joining us with us is Shalini Ali, National Convener of Muslim Rashtriya Manch. With us is Shazia Ilmi, who's a national spokesperson of the BJP. Saeed Zareen is spokesperson of Samajwadi Party. Also joining us is Ifra Jan, national spokesperson of the National Conference. Let me start first and foremost with Ifra Jan. Ifra Jan, the courts have spoken. It's not one, not two, but at least 4 high courts that have spoken on this. And they have said there's nothing wrong as far as these restrictions of hijab, particularly that have been introduced when it comes to a uniform in spaces such as a school, where a uniform is something that is essential. There should be no differentiation among students. Of course, while everybody will have to respect what the Supreme Court eventually says, and we are waiting what the Supreme Court's verdict is, but isn't it very clear that at the end of the day, this is not about religion, but about uniformity?
You see, Madhavan, if it was about uniformity, then the courts would not allow certain religious symbols to be allowed, under the pretext of essential religious practices, and not allow other religious symbols to be expressed. So coming here to right now, keep the law aside. I'll make 3 quick points. Right now, when I'm sitting here, I have a hijab on my head. If all of us were sitting in a class, what difference would it make to anybody sitting here if I were putting on a headscarf? That is number 1. Number 2, if you think of Muslim women, they are the least educated women in the country. If you look at them as a demographic group, they are the poorest group in the country. Our government should be sitting and, we should have a committee and we should decide how do we make access to education easier for Muslim women. On the contrary, you have this trend from the high courts, a very unfortunate trends, where they are coming and saying, how do we make education more difficult for Muslim women to access, a group that happens to be the least literate in the entire country? And the last point, I understand this is going on, the last point I want to make, Madhavan, is that when Sonali Pillai, a 15-year-old Hindu girl, went to the South African court against the school and said that it is my tradition that I should be allowed to wear a nose pin. It's a 400-year-old Hindu tradition. Why is the school not allowing me to wear a nose pin? The South African High Court, the South African Supreme Court came in and said that a Hindu girl not being allowed to express her religious identity while it allowed other religious groups to express their identity was not something which was a part of uniform.
Yes.
Rather, it was indirect discrimination.
I'm very glad you're concerned about the global jurisprudence when it comes to this matter, Ifra Jan. I'm very glad, because that was bringing me to my next question. Let me read out the number of Islamic countries where hijab is not mandatory. One is Saudi Arabia. There is also Kuwait. There is Oman, Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, where as per law, hijab is not mandatory. If all of these Islamic countries, and India is not an Islamic country, we are a secular republic where people are allowed to practice their religion within certain, restrictions that we all know the law. Why is it then, how does it then become an essential practice? Would these Islamic countries not have made it mandatory if it was an essential practice, madam?
Okay, that's what I'm coming to. It is not whether it is a matter of essential practice or not, is not a matter.
You just started your argument saying that that is the basis on which it is not being allowed.
Madhavan, you will have to allow me to answer. You can't, this is not how a debate
No,
is.
you are the one who just said it. I'm not taking away your right to answer. But you cannot say it is not about this when you've just made that argument 2 minutes ago. Our viewers are watching the show.
I have not made that argument. When the South African court ruled on that, it did not say whether a nose pin was essential to Hindu religion or not. It did not go into that. It said that it was indirect discrimination, that a Hindu girl was not allowed to express...
Please, we have other panelists. You just started your argument saying that courts are not allowing this on the basis of what is an essential practice or not. And I have just shown you the global jurisprudence. This jurisprudence does not support your argument. That does not mean that this is not what you said a few moments ago. But let me quickly bring in Shalini Ali. Shalini Ali, the question that I would like to ask you is this. In the case of the Karnataka hijab case, that was a government school. The government has every right to decide what happens in the government school. That right was upheld by the courts there. In this case, it is a private school. The question then arises is that should there be no differentiation of what happens in a government school and a private school? Does the private school's trust then not have a right to conduct how things happen within that school's premises?
See, first and foremost, Madhavan, I think we should all respect the fact that the Allahabad High Court has said that it's not an essential part of Islamic religion, and we should not be even debating about why they have upheld it and why they have made this kind of a judgment. Let's come down to facts. It's a private school. They have their rules. They can ask the children and the parents to follow those rules. You are sending your children to a choice of school that you have wished them to go to. If today you feel that the child's education is hampering because of the hijab, you can change your school and go to another school which allows the hijab. Number one. Number two, hijab is not even, I will not even call it a tradition, because there are people wearing the hijab in a wearing way. There are people who cover their head fully. We have a panelist who's not covering her head fully with the hijab. We have people who are wearing a hijab in a different manner. It's not a tradition. It's something which people are following according to their family, according to what they have been taught. So when we are talking about a court of a different country, I wouldn't even want to go to that aspect, because we are talking about a country which has given all its citizens equal rights, given them democracy, and more than that, it's not about religion or the essential aspects of religion that we are bringing into question. We have the right to keep Roza, we have the right to fast and also go for Hajj, we have the right to follow our religion the way we want to. We are practicing the 5 essential pillars of Islam, and no one in this country has stopped us from. What is happening today is that a hue and cry is being made. You talking about saying that the women in following Islam or Muslim women are illiterate and they should be given that aspirations and they should be able to come into the midstream, then please, you have the biggest example of baby Khadija. You have the biggest example of Razia Sultan. You have the largest example of Muslim women all over the world who are not wearing a hijab, who are educated. You have the Princess of Jordan, who's the wife of the direct ascendant of Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who are not following these so-called practices which are being enabling people in our country especially. I'm glad that you brought in a lot of Islamic countries which don't make the hijab essential, who are not following this kind of a practice. And we should also request each and everyone to think about education as a whole form of education, not bringing in what clothes you're wearing. We are sending children to a school just for discipline and for uniformity. Let's go towards it.
May also introduce Sarah Shah Halim, who's the leader of the CPM. But Syed Zareen, this is my question to you. I'm just reading out from what the order specifically says. The order specifically talks about the entire issue of where this is mentioned. A girl student not wearing the headscarf or head covering studying in exclusive girls section cannot be said to in any manner acting inconsistent with the aforesaid verse 31 or violating any injunction provided in Holy Quran. It is not obligatory, an obligatory overt act enjoined by Muslim religion that a girl studying in all girls section must wear the head covering. The essence of Muslim religion or Islam cannot be said to have interfered with by the directing petitioner to not wear headscarf in the school. बहुत साफ तौर पे इलाहाबाद हाई कोर्ट ने कहा है कि it is not in any way interfering with religion. Your response, Syed Zareen.
माधव, देखिए आज हाईकोर्ट का जो फैसला आया है ना, तो ये इनकी अपनी, ये हाईकोर्ट की अपनी फाइंडिंग है। और अगर किसी भी पक्ष को लग रहा है जिन्होंने शिकायत करी है तो उनको लग रहा है कि वो इससे सेटिस्फाई नहीं है, तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो संवैधानिक अधिकार है जिसपे वो जा सकते हैं, अपील कर सकते हैं, तो वो बिल्कुल वहां जाए, उनके लिए बेंच खुली हुई है। लेकिन एक चीज मैं कहना चाहूंगी कि हमारी प्रायोरिटी जो होनी चाहिए वो ये होनी चाहिए कि एक लिबास की वजह से किसी बच्चे की, इस देश के किसी भी बच्चे की, वो किसी भी रिलीजन को बिलोंग करता हो, हिंदू हो, मुस्लिम हो, सिख हो, ईसाई हो, किसी भी रिलीजन को बिलोंग करता हो, उसकी पढ़ाई ना रुके। अगर उसके जो पेरेंट्स हैं, उसके जो वालिदैन हैं, वो निकल कर आए हैं और उन्होंने अपनी बच्ची की पढ़ाई को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए उन्होंने आज कोर्ट का सहारा लिया, और इस वक्त ये आज सुबह से मैं डिबेट कर रही हूँ, तो ये प्राइम टाइम।
इसका विपरीत भी तो हो रहा है, इसका विपरीत भी तो हुआ है कि लिबास के चक्कर में बच्चे की पढ़ाई नहीं हो पा रही, ये भी तो हुआ है, ये भी तो हो सकता है।
एक चीज कहना चाहूंगी मैं, जो हमारा जो ये माइंडसेट है ना हमारे देश का, ये बहुत दोहरा है। अभी अगर हम बीजेपी के प्रवक्ता की बात करें तो वो कह रही हैं कि नहीं, हिजाब नहीं होना चाहिए, पढ़ाई होनी चाहिए। और मैं आज का आपको बताना चाहती हूँ कि आज का अगर आप करंट वो देखिए, एक हमारे बॉलीवुड की एक एक्ट्रेस है कीर्ति सेनन, उन्होंने रक्षाबंधन पर एक ऐड करा, एक किसी ज्वेलरी ब्रांड का ऐड करा, तो बीजेपी की वरिष्ठ बीजेपी सांसद, देखिए लिबास को लेकर मैं कह रही हूँ, बीजेपी की वरिष्ठ सांसद सुबह से ऐसे वाहियात उनके ऊपर बयान दिए जा रहे हैं। तो ये
मैम वरिष्ठ तो है नहीं, पहली बात, she is a first time member of parliament, and you know, whatever one chooses to believe, while those comments may have been unfortunate, they've caused up a lot of controversy. The point is that can you directly attribute that to BJP? But nevertheless, Shazia Ilmi, I'd like you to respond to her. She has of course brought in that controversy of Kangana Ranaut commenting on the attire of Kriti Senon. Rahul Gandhi has also jumped in on that controversy, not directly linked to this entire hijab debate, but they are saying BJP and BJP thought is linking clothes to what people's actions are. Please respond to that.
Well, just the very fact that this whole conversation is being derailed somewhere else just shows the utter lack of concern and respect some of the political parties have for the education of girl child, Muslims particularly. And I think it's a very serious matter. I will not allow anybody to trivialize it. One, two, derail it. So no matter what this lady talks about, I will bring it back to Muslim girls and their education. Now, it's very sad. Our friend here is, while she's changing the topic here, and the first spokesperson, Ifra, I'm happy to see her in a hijab today. Very often I've seen her without it, but that's entirely a choice. It's very unfortunate that instead of invoking the Quran and the first ayah that was revealed to the Prophet, which was about Iqra and reading, instead of talking about Quran itself and the Constitution, they are putting the blame on the government and the courts. Instead of saying, at least care for the education, these are the women who actually should be going there and telling the families, why on earth are you not following the Quran or the Constitution or Islam? Why are you making hijab an issue? Why are you going to court and asking for the extra concession of being allowed to wear hijab? So don't put it on the government. Don't be so clever by half. I know all of it. And also don't bring in, don't go against the Constitution or Quran. Quran is very clear. There is no place for hijab in Quran. There is not a single ayat that talks about covering the face and the head. So let's not try to confuse everybody.
Okay.
And it's not about something cute like, no, let me finish, because two things were said here. And another fact, Ifra just now talked about religious identity. I refuse to allow you to call burqa or hijab a religious identity when it's not meant to be a religious identity in the Quran itself. Why would you make it? Who are you to decide it's a religious identity? So if a poor girl who's conditioned to believe that's an important thing to do, it is your job. It is your job to read the Quran to her.
Let Sarah Shah Halim respond to that. Sarah Shah Halim, can the religious identity of a Muslim woman be restricted to the burqa or the hijab? Is that appropriate? And at the end of the day, just a second, allow me to complete my question. The courts have repeatedly held up the right of an institution, in this case educational institution, to impose a uniform, to ensure there is uniform education, there is no discrimination. And those are the courts from Kerala to Karnataka to now Allahabad. This is what they've essentially, and even Bombay High Court, what they've essentially said. So the question then comes is, does the personal preference of one particular student, can it override the larger institutional rights? And should that be allowed in the first place if we are seeking a liberal education?
So let us be very clear on one point, that the primary role of any educational institute is to educate, is to build the future of students, whether it's Hindu students, whether it is Muslim students, whatever it is, right? Now, the educational institution cannot force any strict sartorial compulsions or any compliance at the expense of exclusion, right? Now, forcing a girl who's anyway being, othered, right? Forcing a girl to choose between her religious obligation and the hijab, I think it is really discriminatory and unfortunate that a girl who anyway faces challenges to get a proper higher education has to make the choice now.
Sarah Shah Halim, may I ask you a simple question? Yeah, no, you can make your point. I'm just asking you a simple question because you came a little late in the debate. You're saying this is essential to the religion. You're saying that she has to choose between a faith and a, item of dressing. Why is it then that multiple Islamic countries, and I posed this question a few minutes earlier to, one of the panelists, Ifra, Oman, Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, various Islamic countries. Saudi Arabia has banned hijab in examination hall. Kuwait also has ruled that female politicians are not obliged by law to wear the hijab. If these Islamic nations have not made it mandatory, how is it essential to the practice of the faith of Islam?
So I'll be very clear now that essential religious practices, right? Now it has become a very, very heavy term. It's become a very serious term because the term itself, it sets a very high standard on what is integral and what is not integral. And here today, anybody is, having reservations about hijab. Tomorrow, there can be a debate on, I know it is one of the 5 basic tenets. Tomorrow, anyone who wants to create nuisance in the country can say that, okay, now praying 5 times is not an intrinsic part of Islam. If you are leaving the office to, go for Friday prayers, or if you're offering salah during work, let me finish please, is not an essential practice. So here now the debate comes to freedom of conscience. That means, what does freedom of conscience means? It means that an individual personal belief about what their faith demands or what their faith does not demand must be protected, okay, provided that it does not violate public order, it does not violate any kind of morality.
So those rights can be extended outside of the school. Ifra is sitting here with a hijab, nobody is stopping her from doing so, at home, outside. The point is, within the school, should there be obvious discrimination in terms of attire or distinguishing factors in terms of attire? That is the principle which is guiding this. And if a 16-year-old girl is coming out to say that she belongs to a certain community where wearing the headscarf is part of a religious practice, is this the voice of her parents? Or is it the voice of the student? And is she being conditioned to say so?
Let me finish, please, because Article 25 guarantees the right to freedom of conscience. That means the right to freely profess, practice and propagate religion, right? So are we going against what the Constitution mandates us to do? Because it you know, here again, we are dabbling into a very, very volatile territory.
Sure.
where I feel it is unfortunate that girls will be left out of acquiring higher education because...
Ma'am, the problem is this. At least 4 constitutional courts, the Kerala High Court, the Bombay High Court, the Karnataka High Court, and now the Allahabad High Court have come out and ruled pretty much the same thing. That it is not unconstitutional for a educational institution to come out and have these, you know, essential restrictions which are important for uniformity of education.
It's okay to debate on a panel like that. Who is going to explain the conservatives? Who is going to explain to the parents of the child that, you know, blah, blah, blah.
As a liberal person, ma'am, you should be explaining to conservatives. We all should.
No, let me,
Yes,
you mean
just
to
like
say,
to go to Shaheen
let me
Bagh and
complete, let me
Manis and
complete.
Dadis, what is being
You
done to them
mean
is
to say
I think you should go
that
and say...
personal-
No, it's okay. Sarah Shailim, you are speaking for the last 5 minutes. Let's get a counter view as well. No, the point is this, and that is, you know, to me, the biggest irony of this entire hijab debate is those who are otherwise liberals are speaking in terms of restrictive clothing. And that is the biggest irony coming out of the entire debate. We're completely out of time. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt over here. Shalini Ali, Shazia Ilmi, Saeed Zareen, Sarah Shah Halim, as well as Ifra Jan. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.